It started on a Thursday night. The kind that feels endless, too quiet, too heavy. My husband had texted an hour ago, working late again. Don't wait up. He didn't have to say it anymore. I stopped waiting a long time ago. The house was dim, lit only by the pale glow of my laptop. Dinner sat cold on the counter, untouched. The TV played in the background, a soft murmur of strangers filling the silence. But even that noise couldn't hide how empty everything felt. I scrolled through old photos, vacations, anniversaries, smiles that didn't look real anymore. Somewhere along the way, I'd become a background character in my own life. No one noticed when I was quiet. No one asked why. That's when I found it. An online support group called For People Who Feel Stuck. It sounded harmless enough. Just a space for people who didn't know what they were doing with their lives. Like me. I clicked join. Hundreds of usernames appeared, faceless people typing their pain into the void. Some talked about loneliness, others about love that faded over time. I didn't type anything at first. Just watched. The words on the screen felt too close, too real. Finally, I wrote. Does anyone here ever feel like they're disappearing? I waited. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. Then a reply appeared. From someone named Evan. He wrote. Only every night. I stared at those 3 words longer than I should have. Something about them felt human. Like he wasn't just replying to me, he was reaching out from the same kind of darkness. I should have closed my laptop. But instead, I smiled for the first time in weeks. And for a moment, in that dim little room, I didn't feel invisible anymore. That first night, I didn't expect him to answer again. But a new message appeared before I even closed the tab. Couldn't sleep either? I hesitated before replying. No. Just couldn't turn my mind off. He wrote. Yeah. It's like your thoughts get louder when everyone else is quiet. It was such a simple thing to say. But no one had put it that way before, not to me. Not even my husband, who hadn't really listened in months. I didn't know who Evan was. His profile picture was just a blurry photo of a streetlight at night. But his words felt safe. Familiar. Like he understood the kind of loneliness that doesn't need to be explained. We talked for hours that night. About nothing and everything. Old songs, bad habits, favorite movies, childhood memories. Every new message felt like oxygen in a room I didn't realize was suffocating me. At one point, he said. You sound like someone who used to love life. I paused. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed. Maybe I did. Before life stopped loving me back. He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, it was just one line. Maybe it's waiting for you to notice it again. I don't know why, but those words stayed with me all night. Even after I shut the laptop, turned off the light, and lay beside my husband. My mind was still lit by that screen glow. And by someone on the other side who made me feel seen. After that night, it became a habit. At first, I told myself it was harmless, just conversation. Something to fill the silence. But soon, it wasn't just silence I was filling. It was something deeper. Something I didn't even have a name for. Every night, when my husband fell asleep on the couch with the TV still on, I'd slip into the bedroom, open my laptop, and wait. Sometimes Evan was already there. Sometimes he'd send a message first. You made it. He always asked about my day, not out of politeness, but like he actually wanted to know. He remembered the small things I said. The things my husband forgot the second I said them. He'd tell me stories about his life, too, how he quit his job, how he felt lost. How the world used to feel more alive when he was younger. I understood every word. We weren't talking about careers or families anymore. We were talking about the space inside us that had gone quiet. Nights turned into weeks. I started leaving my laptop open beside the bed, just in case. I'd wake up to his messages, sometimes funny, sometimes thoughtful. Always making me smile before I even brushed my teeth. I told myself it wasn't real. That it was just words, just screens, just comfort. But when his name popped up, my heart reacted before my head could catch up. I caught myself checking my reflection before turning on the camera. Even though we never video chatted, I just wanted to look like the person he imagined me to be. And that's when I realized he wasn't a stranger anymore. He was becoming the voice I trusted more than anyone else. It happened on a Sunday night. I was sitting in bed, laptop open, the glow of the screen the only light in the room. We'd been talking for over an hour, about childhood dreams, fears, the strange ache of growing older. Then, in the middle of the chat, he sent something new. A voice message. For a moment, I just stared at it. I'd never heard his voice before. He was words on a screen, safe, distant, unreal. But curiosity won. I pressed play. His voice was calm. Low. Warm. The kind of tone that feels like it knows you already. He laughed softly halfway through, saying, "It's strange, right? Talking to a stranger this much." I smiled without realizing. The sound filled the room in a way silence never could. It felt personal, too personal. Like someone had just stepped into my private space. He didn't sound like I imagined. He sounded better. Gentle but steady. Confident but kind. It was the kind of voice you'd trust with the truth. I replayed it once. Then again. Then again. Not because I didn't understand it. Because I liked the way it made me feel. Seen, grounded, wanted. When my husband walked into the room a few minutes later, I quickly closed the laptop. He didn't notice. He never did. He just kissed my forehead and said, "You still up?" I nodded. But in my head, the voice was still playing. Soft and steady, echoing louder than the man standing beside me. The next week felt different. It wasn't just about messages anymore. It was about waiting, for that little green dot beside his name. For the sound of a new notification. For him. I started noticing the time he usually came online. 10:43 p.m., always around then. My husband would already be asleep. And the house would belong to me and the quiet hum of my laptop. He'd write, "You here?" And I'd always reply, "Yeah." I couldn't sleep. That was our ritual. It didn't matter what we talked about. It mattered that we did. He told me about his favorite coffee shop. How he used to sit there for hours watching people. Wondering what their lives were like. I told him I did the same thing sometimes. Except I watched my own life pass by from the inside. He said, "You sound lonely." I typed back, "You make it sound like that's a bad thing." He replied, "It's not. Some of the best connections start with loneliness." That line hit harder than I wanted it to. Because I knew I wasn't lonely anymore. Not when he was there. When my husband tried to talk to me, I found myself distracted. Half listening, half thinking about what Evan might say next. I caught myself smiling at my phone for no reason. Then quickly putting it face down when someone walked by. It wasn't physical. It wasn't even visible. But something was happening. And deep down, I knew I couldn't undo it. He started sending more voice notes. Jokes. Thoughts. Pieces of his day. And sometimes, right before we said goodnight, he'd whisper, "Talk to you tomorrow, okay?" And I'd whisper it back. Even though no one could hear me. It happened late, later than usual. Almost midnight. The kind of hour where the rest of the world is asleep. And every message feels heavier than it should. He wrote first. "You ever think about how strange this is?" I typed. "What do you mean?" "Us," he said. The fact that I know how you take your coffee. What time you fall asleep, what makes you cry. And I've never even seen you in person. I didn't know what to say. Because it wasn't just strange. It was dangerous. Beautifully, quietly dangerous. I tried to laugh it off. That's what the internet does. Makes the world smaller. He replied almost instantly. No. It's not the world that feels smaller. It's the distance between us. My heart skipped, just a tiny, guilty pause. I stared at his words for a long time before answering. But nothing I could type would sound innocent anymore. Finally, I wrote. You shouldn't say things like that. He didn't apologize. He just sent one more message. Then why does it feel like you don't want me to stop? I closed the laptop. But the question didn't leave the room. It stayed. Buzzing quietly in the air. In my chest. In the dark between who I was and who I was becoming. And that night, when my husband reached for me in his sleep, I realized how far away I already was. The guilt came quietly. Not all at once, just in small, sudden moments. Like when my husband called me love and I didn't answer fast enough. Or when he asked what I was smiling at. And I said just a meme, while quickly hiding the chat window. It wasn't what we said, Evan and I. It was what we didn't say. All the pauses, the silences between words that meant more than any confession. Every night I told myself I'd log off early. And every night, I stayed longer. I'd watch the clock hit 1, then 2. Sometimes the sun would already be rising when I finally shut the laptop. He'd tell me little things, what he had for dinner, what song he was listening to. And somehow it felt intimate, like we were living parallel lives that overlapped only here. In this dim blue glow that knew no time zones. I started deleting our messages. Not because he asked, but because it made me feel safer. As if erasing the evidence could erase the truth. But I couldn't delete the way it felt. Sometimes, while making breakfast, I'd catch myself wondering what he was doing. If he was thinking about me too. If he was waiting for me to appear online. It wasn't supposed to be love. But it wasn't friendship anymore either. It was something in between. A secret space that only existed when no one else was watching. And the worst part? I didn't even want to stop. One night, I caught my reflection in the dark window beside my desk. I barely recognized her, this woman smiling at a screen like it was the only thing keeping her alive. That's when it hit me. I hadn't been faithful for a long time. Just not in the way people usually mean it. It happened without warning. No message. No little green dot beside his name. Just silence, the kind that feels heavier than sound. At first, I told myself he was busy. People have lives. Jobs. Friends. But that didn't stop me from checking my phone every few minutes. Opening our chat, refreshing, waiting for the words Evan is typing. Nothing. That night I stayed up until 2. Pretending to read, pretending not to care. But every noise in the house made me glance at the laptop. Every flicker of light from the screen felt like hope. The next morning, I woke up to an empty inbox. No message from him. My husband was already gone for work. Leaving behind a note that said, "Breakfast's on the counter." The coffee was cold. So was I. By the second day, I stopped pretending. I opened our old messages and scrolled through them like a diary. Every word, every joke, every late-night confession. It was ridiculous. He was just a man behind a screen. But it didn't feel that way. It felt like someone had taken a piece of my voice with them. My phone buzzed with notifications from everyone but him. Group chats, work emails, my husband asking what to have for dinner. And yet, it was his silence that echoed the loudest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there beside my husband. Listening to his steady breathing. So calm, so consistent. Like someone who still believed everything was fine. But my mind kept wandering back to that chat window. To the messages that once made my heart race. How could something that wasn't real feel more alive than everything I had? By day 3, I knew the truth. This wasn't just loneliness anymore. It was addiction, to a voice, a name, a feeling I couldn't even explain. I told myself I'd move on. Close the laptop, forget the sound of his voice. But that night, my fingers hovered over the keyboard anyway. Typing his name into the search bar. Just to see if he was still there. And when he wasn't, I realized how terrifying it felt to lose someone I was never supposed to have in the first place. On the 4th night, he came back. No warning, no explanation, just a new message. Hey. I'm sorry I disappeared. I stared at the words for a long time before answering. My heart was pounding, which was ridiculous. It's just text. Just letters on a screen. I typed slowly. I thought maybe you were done talking to me. No, he wrote. Never that. I just needed time to think. Time to think. Such a simple phrase, but it felt like a confession. I wanted to ask about what. But I was afraid of the answer. Instead, I said. You could have told me. He replied. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to hurt you. And there it was, that word. Hurt. It made something twist inside me. Because you can't hurt someone you don't mean something to. I told myself I'd be calm, distant, casual. But instead I wrote. You did. He was quiet for a while. Then. I missed you. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't poetic. Just 3 words, simple, human, dangerous. And I believed every single one. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips as I typed back. I missed you too. We didn't talk about the days he was gone. We didn't talk about what it meant. We just slipped back into our rhythm like nothing had happened. Like silence had never stretched between us. Like I hadn't stayed up half the night waiting for a name to glow on my screen. That night, when my husband came home, he hugged me from behind and asked, You okay? You seem lighter. I smiled. And hated myself for knowing he was right. It happened late, as it always did. The rest of the house was dark, my husband asleep down the hall. Only the soft blue glow of my screen lit the room. We were talking about ordinary things, work, weather, the kind of small talk we used to avoid. It felt heavier now, like we were both circling something we didn't want to name. Then Evan wrote. I'm going to your city next week. I froze. The words didn't register right away. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For work? I typed. Yeah, he replied. Just a few days. But I was thinking, maybe we could meet. Just coffee. Just to say hi. Just coffee. Just to say hi. 2 harmless words that didn't sound harmless at all. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. Every heartbeat felt like a question I didn't know how to answer. I could almost see it, the hotel lobby, the nervous smiles, the moment when everything we'd built in silence would finally become real. I thought about what he looked like, how his voice would sound in person. If he'd recognize the same ache in my eyes that I saw in his words. I typed. That's complicated. He replied. I know. But don't you ever wonder what it would feel like, to talk without a screen between us? That line hit like a whisper against skin. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Because yes, I had wondered. Too many times. I closed the chat window. But his words stayed glowing in the corner of my screen like a pulse I couldn't ignore. When I finally went to bed, my husband stirred beside me. He reached for my hand in his sleep. And I realized how foreign his touch felt now. Like someone else's hand on borrowed skin. I lay there, eyes open in the dark. Thinking about that message. Just coffee. But we both knew it wasn't about coffee. The morning he arrived, I woke up before dawn. The city was still half asleep, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. My husband's alarm hadn't gone off yet. He was still beside me, breathing softly, his arm draped over my waist like a memory of love that used to feel effortless. I stared at the ceiling and told myself a dozen reasons not to go. It's wrong. It's dangerous. It doesn't mean anything. But every reason sounded like a lie I'd already rehearsed. In the bathroom mirror, I didn't look like myself. I looked like someone pretending to be fine, hair done, light makeup, a sweater that looked casual but wasn't. I told myself it wasn't for him. That lie didn't last long either. He'd sent one message that morning. Still want to meet? I stared at it for 10 minutes before answering. I don't know. He replied. Then just come for coffee. No expectations. No expectations. The safest phrase people use right before they break every rule they have. The cafe wasn't far, 20 minutes from my house. I checked the time again and again, pretending not to be counting down. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the birds outside, the shower turning on, felt like the world was whispering, "Don't go." And yet, my heart was already out the door. I made coffee for my husband, left it steaming on the counter. He kissed my forehead before leaving for work, completely unaware that I was already somewhere else. Not in body, but in thought. When the door closed behind him, the silence felt heavier than usual. It wasn't emptiness anymore. It was decision. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. One message. One choice. It could all end here, the tension, the secrecy, the illusion. Or I could see what it looked like. The man whose words had kept me awake for months. At 10:14 a.m., I typed. I'm on my way. My hands were shaking when I pressed send. It felt like crossing a line no one else could see. But I'd already been walking toward it for a long time. When I looked back at myself in the mirror one last time before leaving, I didn't see guilt. I saw someone who finally wanted to feel something. Even if it cost her everything else. The cafe was smaller than I imagined. Warm light, quiet music, the smell of coffee and rain-soaked pavement. I stood by the door for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. It felt surreal, like walking into a dream I'd built one message at a time. He was already there. Sitting by the window, head slightly tilted toward the light. A book in front of him, untouched coffee beside it. When our eyes met, he smiled, soft, knowing, like we'd done this 100 times before. Except we hadn't. Not really. I walked toward him, every step heavy with months of anticipation and guilt. And in those few seconds, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't the fantasy I'd created. He was just a man, ordinary, human, real. And that made it even harder. He stood up as I reached the table. You actually came, he said. I smiled, barely. You actually asked. We sat down. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was familiar, the same kind that once lived through screens. Only now it had shape, warmth, weight. He looked at me the way people look when they finally see something they've only imagined. And for the first time in months, I didn't know what to say. The words that came so easily online suddenly felt impossible here. He broke the silence first. You're not what I expected. Neither are you, I said. And we both laughed, quietly, nervously, like two people who didn't know which version of themselves had just met. We talked about small things, the flight, the city, the weather. But every sentence carried another one beneath it. The one we didn't dare speak aloud. When he reached across the table, his fingers brushed mine. Just enough to feel, not enough to hold. That single touch said everything, we'd already gone too far. For a moment, I thought the world might stop. But it didn't. The barista called someone's order, cups clattered. And time kept moving, dragging us back into it. I finished my coffee. He smiled like he wanted to say something more. But all I said was, I should go. He nodded. No questions. No promises. No goodbye. Just a quiet look that said we both know this can't exist outside this room. As I walked out, the doorbell chimed behind me. Cold air rushed in, brushing against my skin like a reminder of where I was. The real world. The one I'd left too easily. I didn't look back. But I felt his eyes follow me until the door closed. Outside, the city looked different, sharper, louder, more alive. And for the first time in a long time, I felt everything at once. The guilt, the loss, the strange, fragile beauty of what had just happened. Maybe it wasn't love. Maybe it wasn't betrayal. Maybe it was something in between. A connection born out of loneliness. That lived only in silence. And ended exactly where it was supposed to.